Welcome back to another episode of the Nice Doing Business with You podcast. Today I have Chris Long, who's a co-founder of Nectiv. Nectiv's at the forefront of SEO and AEO for B2B and technology brands. They provide innovative discovery strategies for companies to drive revenue and pipeline for their business. Chris has consulted on search strategies from everyone from startups to Fortune 500 companies. He's worked across a wide variety of industries to include retail, SaaS, gaming, media, and more. Has a bit of a focus on B2B these days. Chris and I go back well over a decade at this point. Love to talk about how we got to know each other quite a long time ago and dive in because over the last few years, I've seen what an influencer you've become on LinkedIn on these topics. So I think we're going to have a good conversation.
Chris, it's been long overdue. Appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's maybe cover how we first came across each other. I think it'll be a fun story because you've done some really cool shit in the last 10 years or so, or it's been about 10 years, I think, since we worked really closely together. So
The backstory there was I graduated from the University of Pittsburgh in 2013. Quickly realized, like with my finance degree at the time, that I did not want to do that. So I had like a little panic attack basically, where I was like, I am going to be a banker if I go on this route, and nothing wrong with that, but that's just not the route I wanted to go with my career. So I quickly started looking at other career options. Marketing seemed more like a good fit. Started looking around, and I've heard about this thing called SEO. And then I was living in Pittsburgh at the time, where Findley Associates, formerly ProFromGo, was. I just started calling every single web design and SEO agency in town. If they had SEO on the site, I was calling them. I'm like, that seems like a cool career choice. You picked up the phone, and we're like, hey, yeah, well, gladly we'll take on an SEO intern if you want to come on, learn a little bit, help us out with some other things we have going on here. And then ended up working there for 5-6 years under your tutelage.
yeah, I think it was something like that. It was I think 3 years full time, and then
3
a
years
little
full
bit
time.
longer it was part time. So, and I only remember that because I was looking at your LinkedIn. So I think altogether it probably was over 4 years, maybe
Yeah.
5. But I remember you were super duper persistent. I also remember when you moved, which I was super sad when you left because you were a rock star, and of course, and now everyone who follows you on LinkedIn knows you're a rock star. But when you moved, the story of how you found your next gig was also something I think was super interesting that people would probably get some value from. Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Well, from what I'm remembering correctly, and I don't know if I landed a job from doing this, but it was kind of crazy at the time how you could do this. I learned a lot about SEO working at, formerly ProFromGo, called Vindili. I
Yeah.
I learned a lot about SEO, but I also learned a lot about social ads and social specifically. So
Yep.
what I remember was reading at my time there that someone had written an article around how they got a job, or even they had gotten a job, and I read another article on someone how they had pranked their roommate by using Facebook ads. And
And
you
you
could run
did both.
I tried to prank my roommates and that didn't work, but that story is crazy. It's basically their roommate was a fire breather, and this person ran targeted ads just to his roommate who was a fire breather, and about how their throat was getting congested and burned or whatever. I did the other route where I ran targeted ads toward people in the Raleigh, North Carolina area about how I wanted an SEO job, right? And I had a little landing page. I didn't get any jobs from it, but I actually got a ton of calls from people being like, "This is genius, super smart, way to go about recruiting." I did not land my old previous job there, but it was an interesting way to try to source jobs and stand out from the crowd a little bit.
Yeah, super cool. So you started as an intern because you wanted to get out of the wealth management banking route that you had started your
Yes.
school in. Quickly jump on to full time. We had a couple of very cool campaigns. I remember this is going back probably 13, 14 years at this point. And since then, you've really been on the forefront of everything going on in the SEO industry. You've spoken on some big stages. Didn't you do South by Southwest or what? I know you've done several conferences, right?
MozCon, State of Search, SMX, Brighton, a lot of the bigger, traditional, SEO conferences I've spoken at throughout the years.
Cool. So we've established you're a badass. So with that said, some of the kind of tips and trends and things you're sharing on LinkedIn, if you're not following Chris Long and you're into AEO, GEO, whatever we want to call it these days, SEO, highly recommend giving him a follow on LinkedIn. I read everything you post, man. You're one of my favorite follows. So, what do you think? I want to get into like kind of not the philosophy, but sort of the fundamentals of what's happening today with how AI is impacting SEO. So, I have some thoughts. Very curious to see what your thoughts are in terms of like, as people have said over the years so many times, like SEO is dead. Like you've seen that as headlines on clickbaity blogs, like time and time and time again. Do you think AI is going to be harmful to like SEO as we know it, or do you think it's just making SEO more important than ever?
It's a great question. I've transparently gone back and forth on it. Even before starting Nectiv, it's actually a conversation I had with my co-founder, like, months before we'd like launch the business. And I was like, look, the direction this is all going is like certainly not making me at ease, right? Like clicks are down and we're seeing that constant trend they call the alligator effect where impressions are up and clicks are dropping. And like he basically sat me down and was like, look, it's like, yeah, I get that, but like at the end of the day, people are still searching for products. They're still, whether it's e-commerce, SaaS, local business, whatever, people are still searching for these things. The systems they might use to search for it, even the way they might ask it, they might ask the system to search for it might change. But like the fact that people are still out there using these technologies to actual like connect with a product or service, and that thing recommends that product or service, that's the that's the business prop at the end of the day. And like whether we focus on Google, ChatGPT, whatever, that system is still there. And to his also point is like, it's like there's also, yes, Google pushes a lot more paid, especially in their platform, which I actually think is to their detriment in the long term. But it's, that's how their business model runs. His point was also those systems will likely need to run off of some type of organic experience. Using an entirely paid experience would be a terrible user experience, and I generally agree. So, no, I do think it's certainly changing. I think that is not popular. So it's like for people seeing their clicks go down, right? It's like that is extremely common, but we are moving into a world where getting mentioned specifically, cited a little bit, but mentioned mainly by these AI systems is the new goal.
Right. And how do we go about doing that? Like I said, I've got some thoughts, but I want to hear yours.
Yeah, so I mean, it's tough. So there's a few different things, and the way the current AI systems are running, like unfortunately, a lot of it is kind of like running down to like even more like kind of like old school spammy tactics, where it's like these listicles or like who are the top SEO agencies, and that the SEO agency who rates it is number one. It's running rampant in the software space, right? So that is one where I think it's going to go in the long direction though is like basically because what you really need to understand is like these when people ask an AI system, whether it's Google AI mode, ChatGPT, and it grounds via search, the AI system is actually like taking that question and then translating that into a search query, and that is called a fan out query. And sometimes
Right.
ChatGPT will perform a couple of them, two or three. Google actually performs up to nine. So what you actually need to understand is like what are the queries that these systems are searching, and that how are they actually going about resourcing information. What you find is when you look under the hood, they're asking things about like reviews, comparison tables, using like a recency like 2025, 2026. What that leads to is like some of the things that have the biggest influence are your own site property, your own content. Two is a lot of affiliates, especially for e-commerce and SaaS. Like affiliate sites are highly, highly influential. Reddit and then YouTube
Yeah.
tend to be the top citing sources. So now the concept of AO, instead of just becoming about your own site ecosystem, comes about how do you manage these four different ecosystems and ensure you have positive brand sentiment in both, that you're actively involved in both. It's not just own site anymore. You have to take into these considers these other ecosystems that AI engines are drawing from.
Awesome. So you're saying we should put more content on YouTube. Maybe it's a good time for more businesses to start a podcast.
100%, right? And
Yep.
to be probably putting your content on any Google-owned property is probably a good bet at this point.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube's still got to be in the top five, maybe definitely top 10 of search engines, period. So, how are AI engines consuming the YouTube content? Is it just through like automated transcripts or?
It's a good question. I don't know if the AI engine. I don't know if the AI engines are actually. My guess was that, and this is my guess, is the AI engines are specifically looking at like very basic like optimizations.
Descriptions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
descriptions, titles, right? Often when we see it, so let's say we're looking at like the best AI transcription apps. Like it's
Yep.
often like basically looking at like those like third party, like, hey, I reviewed five of them, right? I reviewed fellow fast Fathom, Fireflies, whatever, and then I'm actually
Yeah.
giving you the best one, right? And I'm coming to a decision on that. So it's like it's likely using the title plus the actual description in order to source that content. So brands will they can try to own that content by like crafting similar content, trying to like inform their brand narratives. And they also probably need to work on, once again, affiliates and influencer, because a lot of like the third-party affiliates that are writing these content are heavily influencing like what an AI engine is going to say about you at the end of the day.
Right. I got to plug my favorite one on our partner, Ask Elephant. If we're using the example of note takers, which we were talking about a little bit off camera, it's pretty awesome. And you mentioned a little bit ago fan out queries. I just recently watched an interview with Rand Fishkin from SparkToro, who you and I both have followed forever, and Mike King. And I don't know if you caught that one, but I think the way I saw it was from a post you had made, if I'm not mistaken. And it was awesome. But Mike talked about fan out queries and how semantic search basically is also kind of changing a little bit, because these AI engines are so much better at understanding just the nature of language, and how we talk about our work and what we do and our products and services. So that's another good one. We'll have to maybe throw that in the show notes.
Vector embeddings. So for people who want to dive deeper, vector embeddings is that's the concept of how these AI engines will translate your content into numeric representations, much like how they work themselves, and actually guess the word that's most likely to come next.
Yeah, very cool. So, let's talk a little bit about, fast forward, you've been in the SEO game now for, 10 years, well over 10 years. Um, and now your new thing is you started Nectiv, where you're doing AEO and SEO consulting. Tell me about what made you decide that now's the time to hang out your own shingle and jump into business for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually kind of gone back for a long time. And honestly, probably from my early days, like working with you, is like, I think I've always like been kind of like fascinated with like the idea of entrepreneurship. Like, I've always kind of like respected people. It's like you who've like, worked full time and then actually made the jump to go off on their own. I am an extremely conservative person. So while I've always been interested, it was kind of always from afar. And it's like, I could never do that type of thing. Really, what it boiled down to was like, I went the easier route where I've had 10 years of experience. By the end of my last role, I was heavily involved in like running a lot of like the agency operations. So I would get to see things. So I had, insights on like how do finances work and like, right, like how do you market a digital marketing agency? So like I did get a lot of that experience, like directly running the type of business. As well, the stars kind of lined up when I met my co-founder, Jason. Like, he likes to
Yeah.
do everything I don't like to do. I'm in the sales and marketing growth. Like, that's what I'm obsessed with. If I come to work every day and I'm doing that, I am extremely happy. He is allergic to all of that and just likes to do the operations, like work with the clients, like actual build products. He's a full stack dev. So like the fact that I found that someone like our skills just complemented each other so much, I didn't have to go the journey alone. I felt like I had someone on that journey. That was a huge like impetus. I don't think I would have been able to do it without like, kind of my co-founder in my corner as well. So that's been huge as
Yeah.
well. So those two type of things.
How did you guys cross paths?
Yeah, so I was pretty obsessed with kind of just trying to find some interesting people to work with over the past year. Um, what I ended up doing was I was on LinkedIn and I talked to a couple different people, and then I actually saw someone who I really respect, like a really well-known SEO named Paul Shapiro for Uber. He had liked some of the content Jason was posting on LinkedIn. Jason had basically he created this whole site called SEOworkflows.com. It's basically like SEO automations. He was doing it before like the advent of AI. I saw those tools. I'm like, that's really interesting. Then I saw he was kind of VP of SEO at his current role, running operations. I'm like, that seems like kind of a good fit. So I reached out to him, and it was one of those things where, we had a conversation for 30 minutes, and then we talked for an hour and a half, and then we do another one and do the same thing. And every time we were going over, and there was energy in the conversation, and he had great enterprise experience. I had good enterprise experience. So, and it ended up the stars aligned where he's on the West Coast, he flew to the East Coast. We were able to meet up before the whole thing. So like, it just worked out really well where it's like, but I was able to find him, and yeah, we hit it off pretty quickly, which was great. So I
That's
definitely
awesome.
got lucky. It's most people don't have the luxury of being able to quickly align with a co-founder like that.
Yeah. Well, you've built a hell of a network with your LinkedIn strategy, which, you've been doing now for quite a while where, you basically have created a personal brand that's benefits everybody you work with and not to mention yourself, obviously. So tell me about that. In addition to, obviously keeping your thumb on the pulse of everything happening with AEO and SEO and posting about it, but how have you blown up your LinkedIn the way that you've blown up your LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the quote unquote secret is just like time on the platform. Like I was what I would consider relatively early on, I guess, by nowadays standards. Felt it's like when you come in and you always feel like you're coming in kind of late. It was 2020 and I had like I was working at the previous agency, and basically what I had seen, basically what someone had posted was like, "Hey, like something cool to be doing, like would be like kind of post on LinkedIn. We're seeing some of these other agencies do it." And I was like, "That's interesting." Like I'm like I had like probably 7 years of experience under my belt, was like really well versed in like technical SEO, especially. I was like, I'll start doing that,
Yeah.
start messing around with it. And like what I just saw was like LinkedIn was basically operating like a very like early adopter kind of like engagement style, right? The people said it kind of felt like Facebook in the early days were like, yeah, I go on and post and I had like, barely over 500 connections, but like my post would actually get some traction, like on occasion, like I get, 20, 30 engagements or something like that. And like from people out of my network, I'm like, that's kind of cool. And then occasionally you post one and it, goes up to like 50 or 60. And, it became quickly apparent that like, I was, able to get reach outside of like just my individual confined network. Like the algorithm was rewarding that at the time. And it was just kind of fun to do. It's like I had a lot of like weird little like technical SEO tips I picked up over the time. So that I started just doing that and just kind of made a habit of it, right? And I said, okay,
Yeah.
every day I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that every single day. Like I'm going to come log in, have my coffee, post on my LinkedIn, and then start, whatever client work I had for the day. And I just really kept at it for the past like 6 years, right? And then you just kind of like pick up some followers along the way, that type of thing. But like you can't really replicate it. But it's one of those things where like, I've always
Yeah.
heard it's like you're underwhelmed by how far you can get in like 6 weeks, but you drastically underestimate how far you can get in like 6 years. So that is definitely one of those things in like LinkedIn I found to be true.
So just consistency, like in one of the best LinkedIn tips I'd seen, and this was a couple years ago, but Pete Caputa, who used to work at HubSpot, he's the founder of DataBox. I'm not sure if you've ever messed around with DataBox, but it's a pretty cool tool. But he basically posted and said that he treats LinkedIn like his business diary. And that seems like it's kind of what you do. Like whatever you're noodling on, if you saw a cool article or like you have some advice to share, you're posting about it with some helpful screenshots and little diagrams and things.
Yeah, it's a mix. It's like sometimes it's planned, where it's sometimes I'm like, oh, that's a great tip, right? It's like some like that would be really helpful. Like I think that the thing I boil it down to is what makes SEO's jobs easier, right? Like what
Yeah.
information, like what article do they need to be reading right now? Like what little helpful screaming frog tip helps them extract data just a little bit easier. Oh, how should they be using AI as part of their SEO workflows? Like there's so many different directions with it, and also the cool thing is the SEO community is like pretty big too. So like there's a lot of
Yeah.
people who are interested in that. So that's kind of how I think about it. But to your point, I think it's one of those things where it's like I think people are somewhat interested just from like in terms of like how I'm doing, how Nectiv is doing, what are we up to? It's like it is this cool thing where you can kind of like in real time, like kind of like build in public and be like, hey, like we're trying out this tool. Like, what do people think about it? Does anyone want to demo it? Like that type of thing.
Yep.
I think that's also cool where it's like a little peek into the insights of like the behind the scenes aspect of like how we're growing and building the business too.
So speaking of tools around SEO workflows, before we started recording, you and I were both talking a little bit about how we're using Claude, which uh, it's definitely probably my go-to, my favorite AI tool, but I've been using a lot, Gemini, ChatGPT, like since before they're in the news cycle, we were real heavy with ChatGPT. But lately, I feel like once you start to kind of like stack together MCPs and custom skills, the things you can do in Claude are unbelievable. And I got to preface by saying my kind of vision for what's going to come at us is like the people who are mediocre are in a lot of trouble because everyone who is mediocre can like using some of these tactics and strategies can really level up fast. And creativity and strategy is now like grossly underrated. Like I think find because at the end of the day, you still have to act on your findings, right? And uncovering more data and getting some ideas is getting easier and easier and easier. So you and I both had talked about how we set up sort of a Claude environment. Like I actually did this maybe a couple months ago, and then just recently I saw you post something about it. And I'm like, oof, I don't know how I feel about talking about this one because it's like a secret weapon. But then I thought about it more, and I'm like, you know what? 99% of people, even if they could figure out how to do this, wouldn't know what to do with it anyways. Like, I think we should talk about a little bit about like kind of the environments that we coincidentally both set up in almost a similar way. So I think you know what I'm referring to in terms of like analytics for Search Console, SEMrush, MCPs, and once you get that all connected to Claude, it's just magic can happen. So you share me some of your tips, and I'll share some of mine.
For sure. So yeah, I mean, the story was for me was I was like using ChatGPT to create some like Python script, and like my co-founder, I was talking to my co-founder, I'm like, how do I make this better? And he was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Why are you doing things this way? You're doing things like bad. He looked at me like I was like doing something that's been like was done in the 1970s at that point. He was like, this is just wrong. He's like, you
Yeah.
need to be on Claude Code. And once he showed me that, it changed my life, right? Where it's this fully integrated IDE, agentic coding. Um,
Yep.
like I'd say there's several ways I'm using it now, right? And one is what you mentioned, right? Where it's like, hey, like it's amazing at data analysis. Like there's basically a Google Analytics MCP, a Google Search Console MCP. You can connect to like an SEO data source like Ahrefs. You can even connect it down to Google Ads. So once you give it access to all these different data systems, then you can start asking it anything you want about your like analytics data, right? So, like if
Yep.
you have a spur of the moment question, like, hey, like what am I bidding on in the past 30 days that like we are spending a ton of money on, but we have no SEO performance for, you can just ask it and it will give you it, right? Or like, hey,
Yeah.
what do I rank for in SEO really well? Like what am I performing well for? But like what doesn't like really like drive what like doesn't really drive a lot of engagement? What do people get there using my GA4 data? So you can like do that, ask it a bunch of questions. To your point, like you can also like I hate the term, but like vibe code, right? Like
Yeah.
I am a technically inclined person, but like not like definitely not a developer like my co-founder is, but like I created this tool over the week. I created this tool last week that basically like gives an SEO analysis of like, hey, for a given topic, how do you perform across your own site content, the top articles on the web, Reddit, and YouTube, right? We're still working on this. It's kind of like an MVP at this point, but like just with an afternoon's work, I'm building an AEO tool that like I think is pretty valuable for like the conversations I'm having with initial people who want to work with us or our existing client partners. And I did that without, writing a single line of code myself.
That's amazing. Yeah, I was sharing too the little app that I vibe coded last weekend to make our lives easier internally, but I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. But similar type of thing. It scrapes news sources, and then we can kind of cherry pick the articles we like and use them for inspiration for our newsletter. Basically, I spent probably about 10 or 12 hours and maybe $200 in credits on mine, and it's going to save us like 5, 6 hours a week, I would bet, which is like super cool. So back to the IDE, I'm a big fan of that integrated development environment where you basically get all your tools feeding into one place. Quick win I can share. I recently noticed one of our top performing blog posts that we used to get leads from kind of quieted down. Like I just like sort of anecdotally noticed like nobody's called us because they read that blog post and said, "Hey, I found you because I have this specific problem that that post was about." I don't want to give it away because it's a high performing post for our agency, and that post is older. So I fire up Claude and I basically said, "Hey, I've noticed that I'm not getting as many leads from this content that used to perform well for me. Can you do some analysis? Let me know what's going on." And another MCP I highly recommend if you're not using it, it's called Firecrawl. Super easy to set up. You got to just go buy some credits. And what it basically helps Claude do is like crawl a site kind of like Screaming Frog or a search engine bot, like go through the menu, that sort of thing. So I basically said, like, why did this post fall off? It checks out my own analytics, my own search console, and then it uses Firecrawl to go see who jumped ahead of me, and then it reads and tells me why. And then I asked it to do some gap analysis on why did my post fall off. And it basically rewrote the post for me, which, by the way, I also have a bunch of custom skills and have trained Claude on how to write like me. And it essentially identified the root cause, examined all the competitors that jumped ahead of my post, and then gave me advice on how to rewrite the post, recommended article length, some things that they were covering that were sort of like tangentially related to the problem that I hadn't covered, and areas where they went in more detail, and just completely broke it all down for me. I was like, blown away. It was stuff that a couple years ago would have taken us hours to figure out on our own.
And that's like the empowering thing is like it's like anyone can create a solution. Like people like if you're slightly technically inclined, you can create a solution like this. You need to know how to like set up like run Claude off a terminal, right? Yeah, it's a little like weird and wonky when you start. And yes, the
Right.
more technical you are, the more you can like probably string together workflows, but it's like it's really created this yes, it's scary, but it's also created this like amazing empowering thing where it's like if you can envision, right, and write down what you want and like how you want a tool to function and act, you can have a system go out and like build that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like I know my way around the terminal. I've been using it for years, but like I'm by no means an expert, and I get a little nervous still in there because you can do some damage in the terminal if you're not careful. I've been using Cursor a little bit too, which is pretty cool because it fires up a terminal prompt right in the app. And my point being though, whether you're using Claude Code or Cursor, it tells you how to use the terminal. Like it can help you a little bit, but being cautious with it is the words of advice that I would give, because you can brick your computer in the terminal if you're not careful. So in terms of Nectiv and where you guys are going now with AEO, can we talk about that a little bit?
For sure, yeah. Right now, it's like we've said, like search is at this weird confluence, right? Of like Google is at kind of like the hybrid is kind of like trying to thread the needle between like this old 10 results and like the AI overviews now, which is basically like a hybrid LLM. Like right now, basically what I think they're trying to do is like ease people into like a full-on LLM. They couldn't do it overnight, so they said, hey, we'll just throw the AI overviews at the top of the page, show people, train people on how to use an LLM, but like not actually make the, if they want to escape and scroll down, they still have that option, right? I think Google's going to get more aggressive with it, and I have definitely thoughts about where it's going for the future. But we're helping clients thread that needle, right? To like what strategies scale well to both an SEO and AEO strategy? Like what can you organizationally reasonably impact? Like, okay, what's your red strategy? What's your YouTube strategy? Do you have someone with affiliates? We have our own dedicated like AI tracker to help like clients like assort like this information. So what we're really trying to do is provide like high level consulting to help businesses navigate like what the current stage of like the Google search results and like AI search results what are, but also have a vision of like where things are going, right? And like how the search results are going to change in the future because it changes so fast. It's like just today, like GPT 5.4 announced that they're like not showing fan out queries anymore. So like that impacts the data everyone can get. So like it just moves so fast. So we're helping advise client partners on like how those threads look.
I remember you kind of reminded me. So Google just filed this patent that you were talking about. Talk about that a little bit because basically Google has been, I don't want to say stealing impressions, but stealing impressions, or not, or stealing clicks, I should say, by keeping the user on the search page more, whether it's by AI overview. They've done, it used to be featured snippets. AI overviews are kind of like the new featured snippets. And I was reminded of this is old school. I think it was when we still worked together, and I think we both found it hilarious. But do you remember like 10 or 12 years ago, Dan Barker was
Yes.
was trolling Matt Cutts, where basically Matt Cutts said something about like, "Don't be a scraper site," and then Dan Barker took a screenshot of Google search results page. He's like, "You mean kind of like this?"
Yeah, and the best part is that the query that he took a picture of is the term scraper site, and like it's like
Yeah, Google
Google
scraping.
scraping in their own like the definition of a scraper site. Oh, it's hilarious.
It was like the most
Um,
iconic troll in our industry of all time. But fast forward to today, this new patent they just filed that you posted about was like, what are they doing next?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just not surprised by it anymore. It's like the more I've worked in the industry and like you see these things happen, like, it's the featured snippets and then they take over and then they take over weather. What else it's like there was also like a big hubbub around like lyrics because like Google was like actually if you would search like song lyrics, like Google would directly show them in the search results. And then one of the big lyric sites, I think it was like Song Genius or Genius, whatever the site is, they actually did a test where they like took some lyrics, made them false, and then saw if Google scraped it in, and they did. So Google's been doing this for a long time. Google's been trying to disintermediate our content. Like, I just don't think that's going to change. I think like
No.
everything they've done in the past 2 years is just they're stair stepping us into a full on LLM. They're basically saying like, hey, we can't just do this overnight. So like, we have to account for all kinds of, technical aptitudes, right? So like some people, yes, would be able to understand it right away. Other people wouldn't like it. So they are just slowly stair-stepping us, right? They throw us the AI overviews and they show more of them. Now all of a sudden it's like on mobile, it's like you click on an AI overview and you scroll down, it just leads right into AI mode. Like they're just
Yeah.
slowly, subtly introducing these features that just transform us into that experience.
And it's like kind of frustrating. The AI overview has like a whole paragraph sampled from your content and a tiny little link icon that's so easy to miss.
Yeah.
So like they're citing you, but they're like barely citing you.
And if you look, it's like, and Will Reynolds from Zero Interactive has done some good analysis on this, but like even a lot of the links that they're sending in the AI overviews, if you like click on like a lot of these brand links, it's like it doesn't link to the site, it just links to another Google search for that brand, right? So like now all of a sudden it's like, are they significantly inflating the number of queries that they're saying users are searching for? Because yeah, clicking around the search result just leads you to more Google searches. And are they also then able to show like more ad impressions and obviously get more ad revenue as a result of that function?
Yeah, they know what they're doing. It's getting harder and harder to earn that click, which I guess brings me to my next point. Like you have a lot of insight into, what it takes to get AI engines or LLMs to recommend people. So like what are you seeing there? Like I mean, we talked about a little bit, like, more content on YouTube and Reddit, which Reddit's a difficult place. You have to be careful there because you can get absolutely flamed if you're too promotional on Reddit. That's always been the case. So any tactics or strategies you're willing to share to help brands and companies earn the mentions on LLMs?
Yeah, tons of them. And so we'll just start with owned content because that's probably the easiest for most people, right? But like it all comes down to a conversation like how these AI systems work. They do not read the whole page. They read snippets of the page. Like Dan Petrovic from Dejan SEO, he's like does a lot of research around this. He basically found that on average, an LLM will read an LLM if they scrapes like if Google Gemini or AI mode scrapes in like a snippet from your page, it's around 300 to 5 characters max sometimes. So you basically have to give a lot of information about your page in a very short to like amount of like number of tokens, snippets, whatever you want to call it. So
Right.
basically, one of the ways is to self-contain your content, whether it's a table, bullet list, FAQ, in a very condensed format on your website. So like, and you generally want to do that in the top 30% of the page. More studies have come out where basically they're saying like the vast majority of ChatGPT and AI mode, the vast majority of content they're citing comes from the first 33% of the page. So like right immediately in like the start of your content, whatever you want
Yeah.
AI knowing, it has to be at the top of the content in the answer first format in a very concise manner. We did some studies that showed like ChatGPT is more like 2 times more likely to include a table than the traditional web results. So that plus you need to understand what's getting cited, right? What affiliate sites are talking about your products and influencing the results. That's also like a really key element of then like, hey, are we included there? What's the brand affinity and reputation? Like that's also a huge part because like these AI engines are looking outside of just your own site now to like tell people about your brand and your competitors.
Yeah. And I mean, basically you're talking about, old school SEO, right? Like make it technically sound. I think schemas might be becoming more important. I love that tip to do kind of like an answer first summary at the top of the page. That's very something we can action on. And then, as far as like those other sites and what they're saying about you, like that sounds a little bit like digital PR and link building. So a lot of those age old tactics and strategies are still as valid today, if not more than ever.
Reputation management. It's that's actually like I think what the big direction SEO needs to head in is like things are fully going to a full scale like reputation management shift basically. So if your reviews suck, it's like I'm working with some potential partners where it's like the reviews aren't great and they were like, hey, conversions dropped. Well, it's not surprising when I take a look and see like, hey, like when people ask like ChatGPT about your brand, your reviews are not great. So it is saying, you are a mid-tier solution at best.
Right. Okay. So as far as before, I want to talk a little bit more about like the reputation management, digital PR, and like what you're seeing there. And I'm happy to share where I can as far as like how we're trying to address that. But that on-site content, like you like control what you can control, right? That's always been the name of the game, like technical optimization, site speed, that's still important. You gave that great tip about the top 33%. I've seen that same interview with Rand and Mike King. He talked a lot about chunking which is very similar, like what you said, like tables or, formatting your content nicely. And he even showed like how AI uses tokens to kind of read content, which was very fascinating for me to see. I had a general sense, but he really breaks it down. So definitely got to link that article in the show notes. But what else? What else, if anything, comes to mind when you think about like the on-page optimization you can do? When to, like I said, control what you can control on your site, aside from like chunking, formatting, using tables. Like I know FAQs have worked really well. They're making a strong comeback. Anything else there?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's like those are like a lot of what we'd say like from a tactical perspective, right? It's
Right,
like
right.
that bulleted formatted table list answer first, right? So if you're looking for like tactical, I think also on the strategic, there's like a lot more opportunities to understand like, hey, what do we need to go from a strategy perspective? I think there's two different ways to look at it, right? And let's take for own content. You want to be you want to be using different data sources to opportunity size what people are asking AI engines about your company. And people have a lot of data on this. I think it's being massively underutilized. Like search data is the most common, right? Which I do think is actually valuable, where it's like, hey, people ask for like, people are asking for what the best ERP is. They search that in Google. They probably search equivalent in ChatGPT, which I think is true. But there's
Yeah,
also sales conversations. Like people have Gong, like a lot of organizations are on Gong. Like that's like a gold mine of data where you could like, hey, what are my top
yeah,
leads that candidates asking for? I have content around that. Like, how are they evaluating us against competitors? Search Console actually I think is more valuable. You can actually use like a regex string. I wrote an article about this on our site. You can use a regex
yeah.
string in
That's
Search
that's a
Console to
that's
like
a great tip. Yep.
to
See the
go and
long tail
find.
queries.
Yeah, so the regex will basically say like anything 10 words or more in Search Console will show you. It will show you the queries, and like all of a sudden it's like we got like a gold mine of insights for clients that way, where it's like, okay, people are evaluating this competitor or this site way differently than what we thought, right? So that's
Yep.
another way you can do it. You can take a look at if you have a chat bot on your site, like you can actually look at like one of the like questions customers are asking. Like there's all of these different data sources. You can merge them together, and you're not going to get a perfect idea of what people are asking AI engines, but you'll get directionally how are people evaluating them, right? So that's like building those systems and opportunity sizing, I think is more strategically where you want to look, especially with your own site content.
Yeah, that's great, great tip. So what Chris referred to, the regex query you can use in Search Console will essentially show you extremely long tail queries that were used to hit your site, which typically is indicative of someone who is using AI versus, just typing like those basic searches like we used to a long time ago when search was a lot more linear. Like someone would search for like best hunting and fishing store near me or something, and then all of a sudden they start searching for like specifically what they're looking for and who the resellers are of that product, and all of a sudden you start to see different results. And that might not be the best example, but when you start to see those really long tail queries, it's like I said, just more suggestive that they used AI to find you, and I think that's great. And then you said something else. It reminded me, Will Reynolds wrote a great post, and I don't know if you remember this, but a long time ago, you and I actually went out to the Search Church to see him talk. Probably like, I don't know, 2013, 2014. Me, you, and Ryan. That was a fun trip. I think we actually met him briefly, but he had this great post basically saying like, in a world where AI is going to really empower us, but for some people who are slacking on it, like it could take your job. I think it's going to get easier and easier to be more productive and do more research. And basically, what he said is we really need to lean in on the things that AI can't do, which is sort of gel what we're hearing in real life. Like you mentioned, sales calls. So using an AI note taker for all your sales calls and being able to search through them and pull insights out of that, and then jump into a whole different system like Search Console or analytics and apply what you heard there to go kind of fishing for like what you're also hearing in the real world from like your customers and your competitors. Like that's the real value and the real, I think, underrated skill in the future is like how do we as humans kind of move between these systems and our real world conversations and come up with the ideas and the kind of themes that we're hearing and then act on them.
100%. Yeah. It's like, I mean, I've been decently AI forward ever since a lot of this stuff started coming out. I do believe it's like if to to mitigate your risk in the future, you want to be the one organizationally raising your hand to be like, I will try to use AI to improve this process, right? Like you, even if it's not right, even if it's like, even if you just take a stab at it and it's like, okay, I have a solution I want to do, my developers are all stacked up. I'm just going to try using Claude Code to build this and just tell it what I want, right? Or I'm going to try
Yeah.
to save myself 15 minutes each week by doing this process. Like, I think the real skill is that businesses are going to be really hungry for how to use AI. Some of them, yes, the more sophisticated businesses will, already have a good sense, but a lot of them won't, right? And if you can be someone who can go into an organization and say, I can use AI to make us 15% more impactful, you're going to be extremely valuable to that organization moving forward.
Yeah, that's great advice. Um, how about like risks? Like, what are you seeing in terms of like risky business and ways that people are using AI that could sting them? Are you seeing like basically black hat AEO as a theme at all, or has there been any like trends or news you've seen where like AI usage gone wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things, right? Like one, using AI completely unchecked to create content is extremely dangerous in SEO still. Like I'm still like actually like I'm a little more on the fence of like AI content plus like, human in the loop. Google really wanted to make a statement a while ago and was like, hey, for any brands that have just like built like a ton of articles around AI, so like around just using full AI, we're just going to smack those websites down. I think it's harder for more established brands. Doesn't mean it can't happen. We're actually seeing it happen with like companies like ClickUp and stuff like that. So I think that's definitely a risk. I do think the strategy I talked about earlier, saying like, hey, we're the best project management tool and listing yourself number one, and then the rest of your competitor set. I think that works today. I think that's a bit of a house of cards right now. I think there's already evidence. Lily Ray's posting a lot about that. Yeah, I think there's a lot of risk to using AI completely unchecked, like, and even using it for data analysis. I think there needs to be some level of like use it
Yeah,
but verify, right? Like use it but directionally
right.
verify that this data is correct. If it saves you an hour, 2 hours of work, but you have to spend 5 minutes on the verification step, that's still a net positive. But
Yes.
you can't fully 100% trust it without some type of human in the loop like aspect. So like I think there's that element too. I think there's plenty of risk, probably more than I can even like potentially think of. I'm sure some like really big AI experts would like tell
Yes.
me like there's far more risk than I could ever even imagine with all of these products.
That was great advice. I agree with everything you said 100%. So don't use AI work slop. Trust but verify when you do analysis and keep a human in the loop. So like we like the bookend. So like we'll use AI to kind of speed up our research and insights. And in some cases help write, but like our process and systems around like using AI to for writing assistance, like they're pretty grown up. Like we've first
Yeah,
done messaging and positioning guides and persona development. And we've trained our AI like, hey, here's the company, here's what they do, here's their products and services, here's their messaging guidelines, here's how they like to write, here's examples of content that they like how it's written, here are their personas. Now you're ready to write in their
yeah,
voice. And then even then we bookend it on the other side and we proofread it, right? Like to make sure that like this is on brand and we ask our clients to look at it. And I think that that allows you to be, more productive and create quality content a little bit quicker, which, that gives you an edge when you're doing it right
100%. I
without,
think
you know, making it look like you're just pumping out AI work slop.
100%. And I think your point kind of inspired me. It's like, I think there's also a level of just being transparent about it too. It's like being transparent about it to your clients, to your stakeholders, whatever. Like, it's like, when we deliver work, it's like, we'll often be like, we use AI to do this. And like, rarely, especially if it's like research based, like, rarely does anyone have a problem with that, right? I think if we tried to pass off, like, hey, like, this was like my full analysis that I did, right? That was just 100% like AI without a human in the loop, like, that would be a problem. But like, if you're transparent about it, I think people are generally okay with that. To like people, it's like I use AI to like analyze like to take each of like a client each of their like 50,000 keywords from each of their competitor and then build
Hmm.
and basically say like, hey, what are the primary acquisition strategies? I just was like, hey, I linked to the report, AI used to generate this, but like directionally we think it's true. And I think there's a level of like, if we're transparent about it, like people are generally more than happy with like the research around it.
Nice. All right. So one of my last questions I want to ask you is: you're always up to speed on like what are some of the the latest greatest tools for AI, AEO, SEO? What are some of your favorite things you're logging into every day these days?
Yeah, so a couple things, right? I mean, one, we've talked about it, but Claude Code will change your life. If you're not using Claude Code or some type of like agentic coding platform, do yourself a favor and do that. It will change the way you do data analysis, empower you to write tools. I think honestly, that's been the single biggest one for me. It's like just to rapidly improve my productivity. I still think I think there's different use cases that a lot of people don't think to use AI for. I think the most common use case, like, hey, how do we use AI to like write a piece of content or outline, but like it can be used a lot more than that. Like I'm still heavily into ChatGPT, but I'm often using it as a knowledge partner is probably my biggest use case. It's like what you were saying. It's like, hey, I'll take sales notes from it and be like, give me everything. Like, give me what do you think are the secret keys to winning? What was the behind the scenes implications of this? Like, what do I need to dig deeper in? And give me recommendations for a follow up call on questions. Like, I think there's a ton of like opportunity and like insight just to be had there, using it to like as an idea and thought partner to bounce your ideas off of. With AEO specifically, I do think it's like it is not perfect, but I think everyone needs some type of like AI tracking tool. I truly believe that it is directional. It is not perfect, but I believe that if you're actually seriously making an investment in AEO, you will have a Profound and Athena, Peak, whatever you want to roll with. Some people we have our own homegrown solution. A lot of places do. Like whatever the case is, have one of those. I think you need to understand broadly like how are AI systems talking about my brand, right? And like have some
I
type of like
gotta
scalable data around
I
it.
gotta push on that one a little bit because I've been digging into that myself, and I've seen so many schools of thought where it's just so wildly inaccurate and hard to trace. Like, because basically a lot of these LLMs become like your little AI psychophant. And what I mean by that is like they're just constantly reinforcing like your own biases and what it knows about you. So the example I saw is kind of the same way Google over the years started with personalized search. Like if I ask what the best agency in Pittsburgh is, it's likely to tell me. But
Yes.
if you ask what the best agency in Pittsburgh is and you're, on the other side of the country, it's likely to say something totally different. And you multiply that by, the way that LLMs work and the language that they use. I saw some numbers, and don't quote me on this, but I want to say that it took them something like 1,400 queries to get the same suggestion as X% of times. So, like, when I see these tools now that are, I don't know if purporting is the word, but it's the word I'll choose, purporting to say, like, we can accurately tell you how you're showing up in LLMs, I just scratch my head because I don't know if anyone's figured out how to figure that. It's almost like talking to a person, right? Like every day you might recommend something different, right? So which one have you found that seems like you actually sort of trust the results?
That's a good question. And it's like I would say this, the caveat is they're all you are right. They are all going to be fairly inaccurate because of the personalization that goes on, right? It's like it knows so much about you. Like you said, it probably knows you're a digital marketing agency owner, like with X plus years, it probably knows your brand preferences. Most of them will do right on a logged out state, right? There's the most like search trackers will do the same thing where it's like a logged out state. Like if someone started a fresh
Yeah.
instance, like what does the response and result look like? I still think there's value in it because one, when people are asking you about like what's your visibility in the AI search engines, what's the sentiment of your brand, the answer cannot be I don't know. These systems at least give us some proxy, very directional proxy on something that's important. So let's say yes, it goes and tracks that like Reddit is like is the second most cited source in your profile, but like reality it's like five. That's still directionally good enough to take action on. So, like, I think you're right. You have to take these with a huge, huge grain of salt. I think they're accurate enough directionally that you can, like, make somewhat informed business decisions based on.
Okay. So what's your favorite one?
My favorite one, it all depends on what you want. If you like, Athena's a great one if you want a little bit more scale. I actually think that like most people probably aren't tracking enough prompts. It's like because if you just track like 50 prompts, I'm not really sure what that tells you. I actually think people need to be tracking to like the hundreds of prompts at minimum.
Wow.
Yeah, minimum, right? I don't think it's like traditional search results where you can because you need to be like the way
Yeah.
conversations work, you need to be accounting for
Right.
every single variant. So like Athena will give you a little bit more scale. Profound has like the best UI of any of them. I've also heard some pretty good things about Peak as well, but Athena and Profound are the ones I have the most experience with. Those are like what our client partners tend to gravitate to.
Very cool. I'm gonna have to check those out. Cool. What else? What else should we cover? I know we're kind of getting to the top of the hour here. What did we miss?
I don't know, man. I think where things are going right now is like Google is going to roll out an LLM. If I'm going to have to make a hot take prediction of where we're at moving forward, I think Google rolls out AI mode in May this year. I think all
Ooh,
the
bold
stars are.
prediction.
I think all the stars are aligning for them to do that at Google I/O. Um, that's where I think things are headed. I could be very, very wrong on that. I just don't. I think they once ChatGPT got released, we're basically like, we need to launch this in our engine. They just didn't because their user base was so expectant of their behavior. I think they needed to take a couple of years in order to get the system to a point where users will accept it largely.
So your thoughts when you say it's like a full, more baked AI mode, it's going to be like this homepage of this Google search page is basically going to be an LLM style chat, right? Where you just have a conversation with Google versus just the traditional search bar.
Yes, basically, yeah. Or that
Yeah.
feature, or like they still have the traditional search results in some sense. Maybe my guess is they would do something like they'll make AI mode the default experience, but like still give users an out by like having a like classic search button at the top right corner that lets users toggle back. But AI mode will be like the default experience.
Interesting. And we hinted at that patent a little bit earlier in the interview, but I feel like it's more relevant now that you think Google's going to go full AI mode in the next few months. Can you talk about what we saw there a little bit?
Yeah, the patent is basically saying that Google has a patent to do a system where it looks at a query, evaluates the quality of a landing page, and basically says that that landing page we don't think is good enough, we're just going to build one using AI in our own platform, right? Now, what they could do with that, what sets that threshold? That threshold could be insanely high and be like, okay, yeah, we think all these landing pages suck. We're just going to build our own, right? It just is another lever for them to basically like own the website experience, right? So like I think a lot of people in local SEO will actually be like broadly familiar with this because Google
Yep.
forever has actually kind of like owned that experience where you search a local business and then it's like, okay, instead of clicking on their website, you just click on their Google My Business page or Google Business page or whatever it is these days.
Right. Right.
And then like you can do everything, look at reviews, photos, make bookings directly from there. They're basically trying to keep you in that ecosystem that would be similar to what they're doing with landing pages. I did see that people did mention that maybe it's more for e-commerce sites. I didn't see that in the patent, so maybe it is more e-commerce focused than I think, but I think it just shows, the level direction Google's
Yeah.
going.
My hot take on it when I read it, and then I'd had to go do a little research, is that it kind of almost reminds me of like Facebook lead ads. Facebook kind of took over the experience of like converting the lead, right? Versus just sending it to your landing page. I would hope that Google's intent there is to make it more of like a thing for advertisers, where if they don't think their landing page is quality enough, they're going to help convert the lead for you. And then, potentially use that as a way to like, instead of pay per click, it might be pay per lead, right? Because now Google's basically building you your landing page and helping you get more leads, right? If they believe you're a quality business and quality advertiser, which I think is
Exactly.
sort of similar to what you said, but like I'm going more towards you slanted it towards e-commerce. I'm thinking it might more be a little more intended towards like lead gen, lead capture. Some of the vibe coding conversations I've been listening to, you reminded me of that. They're just wild. Like basically where we're going is like code is disposable, right? Like creativity is so important, good design, but you can crank out these, custom quizzes and interactive lead capture mechanisms with Claude Code in like minutes. Get a couple hundred leads, build another one, burn it down. Like code is cheap these days.
Yeah, I
So
mean that you said that is a threat, and like I don't live in like right the DevOps ecosystem. I still think that's like are amazing ones, good amazing developers worth their weight in gold. Obviously, I think it right. It's developers are just using it more and more, and like it's probably some like marketing aspect. But I think the developer of Claude Code just said the lead dev of Claude Code said he uses it for 100% code. Now, how much of that is
yeah.
trying to plug their own product? But I think there's some truth to it, right? I would love to survey a list of 20 50 different developers and say like how much code are you actually writing these days versus how much code is AI writing for you. And I actually saw another interesting shift, another interesting perspective on this too, which I think is very interesting, that the most skilled developers in the future will actually have insanely high domain knowledge basically. So they have some like like, maybe they're really deep in insurance, or right, it's like market or e-commerce marketplaces, whatever it is, they have really deep domain knowledge. So now they can start creating these like really cool like custom builds like for a specific industry or product, right? But they have to know what the customer need is. What they seem to think is going away more is like people are just like, hey, take this, code this, and basically like with no outside product expertise. So I think it really does showcase like there's a need for like everyone to understand more about the product, more about the business, more about the strategy side of things. Because if you're just executing a set of instructions, like that's getting easier and easier.
Yep, good stuff. All right, Chris, co-founder of Nectiv. Let's hear the elevator pitch where people can find you.
Yeah. So if you want to find me, nectivdigital.com. I blog there a bunch, or follow me on LinkedIn. I post there 5 to 6 times a week with like helpful SEO, AI search tips. You want to reach out, follow me there, send me a DM if you're interested in anything.
Chris, as always, nice doing business with you. Thank you for joining this episode. I think it's going to be a good one. If you're interested in following us, please be sure to like, subscribe, or share this episode with a friend. And don't forget, we have the Please Advise newsletter at pleaseadvise.io, where we also share some tips and content on SEO, AEO, and stuff that growth marketers love to read about. Chris, thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you having me, Chris. It was awesome.